It's time to talk about fierce conversations. And no, I don't mean ferocious.
It sounds scary.
It's not ferocious. It's fierce.
All right.
Let's get intentional about the conversations we're having in our home.
Mama says namaste. Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh, yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
You know, connecting in a very honest and pure way has been something that I have sought in our relationship.
Yeah, and I think that this book has been a great conversation starter, even though it's taken me in our 19th year of marriage.
It's probably taken like 10 years.
This.
I was counting up. Like, we've been on the road 7.
Uh-huh.
I read that book about a year or 2 into real estate.
Uh-huh.
It's been about 8 years ago I read that book.
I have to say you've led us in the conversation a lot, which, you know, that actually is a good tie-in to getting started with what we're talking about today. Okay, so we've just kind of skirted all around the fact that we're talking about fierce conversations. What are fierce conversations? It's based on a book. This is a book by Susan Scott, and it's called Fierce Conversations, Achieving Success at Work and in Life, One Conversation at a Time. And, I mean, it says even on the front cover, it says fierce it doesn't mean ferocious, like I said in the intro. It means robust, intense, strong, powerful, passionate, eager, unbridled.
Useful. And,
it's funny. When I read a book, I go crazy with my tabs, marking everything that I think was a significant point. And I love it.
Which is fun to read after you.
It is. It's fun to go back and to see what did I mark. Well, Nathan marked one page. One page in the whole book had a marker on it. And I have to say, oh my goodness, this right here is pretty powerful too. It says the person who can most accurately describe reality without laying blame will emerge as the leader. And for me, having just read this book and knowing some of the fierce conversations we've had over our years, I'm very grateful that there have been times where you have led the conversation specifically like that, without laying blame, with just doing what Susan Scott lays out as the mineral rights. So let's just get into what that intro is, what the mineral rights are, and then we want to relate how we have fierce conversations at home, because this is oftentimes, in the workplace. And although she references some about your marriage and your intimate relationships as well, we wanted to kind of give some real examples of how we do this with our kids and with our partners. So she does fierce conversations based on this model called mineral rights, and it was called mineral rights because a participant in a workshop that she was doing said, if you're drilling for water, it's better to drill 100-foot well than 100 one-foot wells. So to think about that, 100-foot well rather than 100 one-foot wells. This conversation interrogates reality by mining for increased clarity, improved understanding, and impetus for change. So there's 4 steps in having a fierce conversation. Number 1, interrogate reality. And that's where that laying down the blame and simply interrogating reality, it is what it is. Like, this is the reality of where we are. Regardless of who's to blame for it, this is the reality of where we are. Starting with that interrogating reality is powerful. Then we look at 2 being provoking learning. 3, we tackle the tough challenges. And 4, we enrich the relationship. So when we have a conversation in our family, these are the 4 mantras we can kind of surround it by. When I go into, I come home and I'm frustrated because Nathan didn't get around to something I thought he was going to do. What should I do? Well, if I follow this, if I interrogate reality, I seek to understand what what was he doing instead?
Hey, baby,
We
what's
look at-
cooking?
Right. We look at how to tackle the challenge, and then I look at how we look at how we can enrich a relationship. That creates a conversation that's productive that allows both of us to move forward.
Exactly. And that's the point, is you both want to move forward. You don't want to drag one person down the road, or you don't want to feel like you're always, pushing everybody out the door. You want it to be a collective decision so that you can really feel understood. And when you're in a relationship where you feel understood and heard, it's one of the most peaceful, comfortable environments that you could possibly create for yourself. But you have to create it, and it's an active thing that happens every single day. You don't have just one fierce conversation about an issue and then it's done. A fierce conversation brings some of those unspoken big white elephants up and into the room, and let's work through that so we can get to there, because all those things all those unspoken realities that we're all kind of working with sometimes are weights that keep us from getting to our ultimate excellence.
Right. I think about when we were dating, and we've shared this story before. So when we were dating, I was so ready to get married that it was a little too overwhelming and intimidating for Nathan.
I was cautious. I
Yes.
wasn't. I love this woman. Yes.
But
everything I've been told was wait till I was 30, and I was 23.
Exactly. So Nathan ended up calling a break in our relationship, to put it kindly.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that with a lot of hurt. And so, my response was to, kind of give him the cold shoulder. And fast forward to us realizing how much we missed each other and wanting to try again. And so we started to try to repair our relationship and test this out and see if we really could make something work here. And I was pretty closed off.
Yeah. I was going to have to dig my way back to your heart through this pile of rubble I had created.
Right. I remember us just having a fierce conversation where basically you started with interrogating reality. And I think sometimes we miss that part. We jump straight to how we want to fix or what the challenge is and what the solution is. And we don't get real about how it is right in the moment. And we need to address the reality of it. And sometimes that can be that rude awakening that says, oh, wait a second. When Nathan brought up the reality that, hey, if we're going to have this relationship, I'm going to have to be able to go deeper than the surface with you. And if you're unwilling to show me more than the surface, then what's the point in us pursuing this? And for him to kind of jar me into attention of, wait a second, okay, I can't just keep him at arm's length. I want him to be more than that, so I have to give a little here. Was and me realizing the risk of losing what we were creating jarred me enough to be willing to be real and honest and vulnerable again.
Or it could have pushed you away and into the relationship.
But what relationship are we having?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
What relationship were we having by not having that conversation? And
but that's kind of the point of the book of Fierce Conversations,
right.
And kind of the meat of her point to me was we sometimes tiptoe and avoid these uncomfortable conversations because we're afraid it's going to run somebody off or add more wound to the pot. Sometimes as a guy you'll say something like, oh man, wish I could take that back, but it's out there, it's gone, and all right, maybe we can move to the next one. But you've got to continue to try and kind of build that trust of putting yourself out there to say, hey, if we're going to have a relationship, it can't be with you protecting your heart all the time because you're afraid I'm going to hurt it again. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just part of a relationship. So if we want to get into this, let's get into it. If not, I totally understand. I've been a jerk. Mm-hmm. That's a fierce conversation that'll give somebody two ways. When you're doing a manipulative conversation, there's only one way.
Well, it talks about in the book about not, when you have a fierce conversation, it's not just coming in with like the compliment sandwich or something like that. They're talking about, when you have maybe an employee that's coming in, you need to have a conversation about their work, the quality of their work. And it's clear, and it's been, rumblings have been going on in the office forever. Well, then them coming into your office and you going, so Susie, how's your day? I love what you've done around your desk. They're just waiting for when the ball's going to drop. So being honest about what's going on. So when we take this and we look at in the home, we're looking at what these relationships are. I mean, an example of this can be, at getting to the point where, especially having a new child in the home or a young child in the home, you've got new baby, you've got new shifts in focus, things are running like crazy, everybody's in reaction mode, and you've become more and more distant from your partner, and you start doing things as side by side, and then you start noticing the gap. And instead of longing for what was, you start building resentment for the little things they're doing now. And all of a sudden it gets bigger and bigger, where you start creating this, I'm frustrated that they are unaware, that they aren't supporting me. And, I don't feel supported in the house. I don't feel like they're aware of me. I feel like they're going around doing their own thing. And you start creating these stories. Well, you're creating an even bigger chasm. And sometimes there's a lot of miscommunication in there. I look at that and I think of a dad feeling helpless in those first few months.
Yeah.
Where
how do you tell your wife, I'm jealous of this baby we made that you're giving all the attention to, but I love it?
Yeah, I love it.
How
but
do I deal with that?
I'm second fiddle or third fiddle or fifth fiddle, depending on how many children and other things you have going on.
Yeah.
And so you have a guy who's feeling inadequate, who's feeling pushed aside, and then, they figure out their own routine to kind of stay out of the way and not get anybody mad at them. And now, there's anger about staying out of the way. Well, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
It can become this really vicious...
hide from it for 20 years and then get a divorce. That's what I recommend. No, don't.
That's a really...
Be serious about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the reality that happens is, we can avoid, we can walk around it, and we can do things and stay together for the sake of the children. And
it's actually, to me, it's more of a distraction. I don't think it's for the sake of the children. It's just something else to do.
Something else to focus on.
It's something else to focus on.
But I have to completely call that one out and say the harsh reality of it is, when you have tension in your relationship, do not think that is a better environment for your children. Are any of us living in tension, living in stress, frustration, and anger and resentment and all of those things, it will impact us physically, mentally, emotionally. It will impact us.
It's like an emotional flare that you think people don't see.
Right.
But we know.
And our kids sense it. And I think we talked last week about how, Dr. John Gottman's research, they studied the urine in their, in children's, they've studied children's urine and been able to determine the level of stress in the house and whether their parents were happy based on that. And so our kids carry stuff with us. And so us not having a conversation, quote unquote, for the sake of the kids, because we need to just muscle through and make it work. What is that teaching our children? It doesn't mean that we are an advocate for just turn around and get a divorce if things don't work. No, not at all. We very much believe in committing to love and showing up every day. And that takes two people committing to love and showing up every day. And when that is repeatedly denied, for whatever reason, someone is not at that point and not ready, it's time to have a conversation about the reality of what is. What environment are you creating for your children? What are they seeing as healthy in a relationship? In what is a safe place for them? What are they experiencing in that? And
the speed at which this thing can shift is pretty tremendous. I mean, it's usually these tensions are weights that we're carrying around until something that we've defined in ourselves is satisfied. And so in some ways you're kind of holding those feelings hostage. Until I get this, I won't release them. And that's not really fair to the feelings, that's not really fair to yourself, and that's not really fair to the other partner. The sooner that we start focusing and kind of bringing attention to some of these conversations that, yes, are uncomfortable, but are very necessary, the sooner, it's kind of like, that person who's in a job that they hate, but it's necessary, but they finally either get fired or they get the nerve to quit and find another job, and they realize, oh my God, this is what peace feels like. I had no idea. I'd given myself permission to be abused by this place for so long, I had forgotten who I really am. And here I am now, trying something new, and this feels good. This is exciting. I've got vim and vigor again. I've got a reason to wake up in the morning again. I'm excited. Those types of feelings are there for a reason. I mean, they're there to keep you moving. They're to keep you going, and because it's, fierce conversations are scary, especially if you like to keep the peace. I like to keep the peace, but I also like to be honest and have a genuine conversation.
Because the reality is, keeping the peace while resentment brews, that's an eruption bubbling under the surface. And so what happens is, in our desire to have smooth waters and keep the peace, we brush that under the rug, brush that under the rug, brush that under the rug, and all of a sudden it's not just a little bump, it's a mountain, and that mountain has a volcanic explosion at the top of it. And all of a sudden it becomes a huge blow up. And then that's where we get these, out of left field, I want a divorce, and you're going, what? I mean, I forgot the groceries one day.
Yeah.
And there's so much more. I mean, a relationship requires two people that feel heard and supported by one another. It's building on trust and respect and valuing each other. And when one person doesn't show up, that's time for a conversation about it. What's going on? Sometimes Brene Brown talks about how she and her husband will give each other percentages. I'm at 20% today. I'm at 50% today.
Yeah.
And they flat out share their percentages, which is such a data geek person to do. She, of course, she loves that. But she'll call it percentages because she's calling it out, saying, hey, hun, I'm only functioning at this much today. I need your support here. And they help each other out, and they kind of balance each other in that way. It's hard to just carry everything. We want to feel that support. So, I mean, showing up for your partner means, first and foremost, you have to show up for yourself. Take responsibility for you and your actions and how you are representing yourself to the world. And then pay attention to the person that you're choosing to live life with and create life with. Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes that can be, a big blind spot for the other person. Like, one of the things that we just kind of allow is, I drive everywhere, typically. It's just easier. It just ends up working out for our life. But, like when my parents went through their divorce and we were going on a trip just to kind of get away and clear our heads, you made sure that I had all the space in the world and just basically pushed me into a place where I could just have time to just be with myself and not have to carry anybody's weight. You drove 8 or 9 hours and kind of forced me into that. I didn't really want that, but I said, okay, I'll allow myself to be taken care of.
Right.
And sometimes that's necessary. Some of those fierce moments are some of the most healing and profound moments that we have in our lives. And if you want to build a powerful relationship with your kids, having those fierce moments with your children are just as important as they are in your primary relationship with your significant other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for that, just even that example. Yeah. So often, I'm a strong personality. I can lead and I can make decisions, and I do a lot of that, especially in my work. When it comes to our home, especially when it comes to driving and making decisions for navigation, I do default to following Nathan's lead. And yet at this time, I saw the reality of what was in this moment, that Nathan was needing to carry so much that he was crumbling underneath. And I saw the potential breakdown. And so regardless of what roles there are in the family, which we're going to get into more next week, regardless of what your role is in the family, when you love somebody and you see them struggling, step it up. What can you do? What can you do to be there and to show up and to be a support for them? I stepped out of my comfort zone and said, hey, I'm taking over. We're doing this trip. And you're not thinking.
Driving.
Yeah, and you're just going to sit there and just be. And it was such a beautiful healing trip for our whole family, of just creating space for us to grieve, let go of what was, kind of assess what is, and kind of vent and get it out in a safe space.
Yeah.
And we all needed that. So that goes into kind of what are the things to do to kind of create an environment for having these conversations. And I've been playing with AI. I've been learning a lot about AI.
Don't hide your, tell them your awesomeness.
Yeah, so I'm learning about how to utilize AI. And so I had it curate some tips for bringing fierce conversations into your home and talking with your kids and in talking with your partner. I mean, some quick examples as we kind of go into this is maybe you're having a fierce conversation with your child about screen time and how much time they're on it, or about their grades and what they may be struggling with or where they are at in school. Now, granted, for us unschooling, we don't necessarily have the grades, but it may be
but we
your
have
drive.
the same conversations.
We have lots of conversations about the drive and motivation to grow. It may be having a conversation with them about their behavior. With your partner, it may be getting real about your finances and making sure you both are on the same page. Being open and honest about your sex life or lack thereof, and where
we're
that
talking about
physical
partners
connection
now, right?
is. Yes, this is partners.
Right.
And also looking at a conversation about parenting, especially when you have different parenting styles. And again, we're going to get into this a little bit next week when we talk about roles and the fact that we as parents kind of are different parents for our children,
and that's important,
right? And not just shadows of each other. So with all of these, some of the key things that you want to have when you're thinking about having this conversation. Number one is choosing the right time and place. I cannot stress this enough. I have had kids come up and they like dump something heavy on me, and I'm in the middle of a work day, and I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
I can't process this right now. Or they'll ask, they know well at this point. Yeah, I mean, no can I. Don't you ask me a can I when I'm in the middle of work mode. The answer is going to be no, because the timing is wrong. Not because the can I is even a negative one or anything. It's just the timing.
But it's for everybody involved. We try to help our children recognize that. And even our girls will kind of nudge each other when they see one, asking when I'm in the middle of cooking, hey, Daddy, can we go get some ice cream? What makes you think now is the time?
Right.
maybe after a walk, that'd be a good place to land it, or, at the end of the day. And so, we try to help them understand that just like you can speak to people where they can really feel heard from their personality standpoint, once you start to tune into that, knowing when to speak to somebody and how to have that conversation is really important, because I've been forced into some really fierce conversations, and the result has been pretty awful when I was jammed into them.
Well, and that's another thing to say. I mean, timing can be because you've got lots of other things going on. Timing can also be based on how heated you are in your emotions. As much as we want to have a fierce conversation, there are times with our whole family where we will be too agitated
to get anything done,
and we're too passionate about it, and it's better to take a breather. I mean, that's where, especially me being called last word Ashley, I've had to learn to bite my tongue. And I'll just stop the conversation sometimes, just because of the reality that we recognize this isn't the time to do this. And we'll address it at a later date.
Right.
It is okay to take a break, and with the commitment to come back and address it at a later date. Having a fierce conversation is an intentional conversation, not just reaction in the heat of the moment. So don't drop the conversation. Just pay attention to your timing.
We'll discuss this at a more opportune time, my dear.
Right. And then the next thing is, start by building rapport. And we talked about this with trust building last week. And
this is critical.
Yeah, you have to build a foundation there. If they don't trust that you care about their best interests, then you're already the enemy before you've even started the conversation. Right.
And that's something sometimes you can't control. And you can also point out and just work towards building as much rapport and trust in that person's life by being an honest sounding board.
And that's the next tip. The next two tips really build into how do you build rapport? Well, first off, be honest and transparent yourself. Share your thoughts and feelings in a respectful way. And what I mean by that one is specifically sharing your thoughts and feelings as far as what you are able to own, not what somebody else has done to you.
Yeah.
You make me feel that I feel this way when this happens. You know, not you did this to me. You didn't hear me here. You don't do this. You always make sure that you're not using those words never and always and can't in your verbiage.
Yep.
Own your own feelings and recognize that you're speaking about a specific moment. Don't just dogpile, because dogpiling just instantly puts somebody on the defensive. So if you're going to pull out every single transgression this person has done leading up to this point,
we're losing.
That's not a productive conversation. That's just a dumping of their wrongs.
But understand that this is, you are rebuilding pathways in your brain. I mean, I still have a lot of issues with you always. I mean, that's just like an immediate go-to for my mind, which is not something that I mean, but it's just something that I guess was done in my family a lot. And so, you know, to reprogram that is tough, but all it is just catching it and giving just having it. Honestly, I think the biggest piece for me in Fierce Conversations, because you know, this was read during a real estate group is what we read it in. And there were some people where, you know, there were some hard conversations that had to be had, and it was just scary for some folks to have those conversations. And the more you care and the more you can find those connection points of, you know, I really want this to work. I'm not trying to be an adversary here. I want to be a partner here. That's what a fierce conversation is about. It's not to hurt anybody else. It's to, you know, here's the reality that I'm seeing, and you know, I know that you're in your reality in some ways. Let's see if we can get that to align and as much as possible.
Well, and oftentimes, I mean, where we so often have disconnect and distrust is when our actions don't line up with our intentions. So if you're having the disconnect, then maybe it's time to be open and honest and actually share your intention. So then you can be called out for your actions. Well, you said your intention was to not be on the phone all the time. However, your actions are showing that you're picking it up at every downtime. You know, I'm trying to determine what to listen to. Do I just watch what you're doing, or do I give you a break because you said this? It's not lining up. And so you can have some conversations about it, but be open about what your intentions are, because I've seen this disconnect with couples where they think they're encouraging and pushing and motivating somebody else and their partner, and instead what they're doing is making them feel guilty and badgering them. And their intentions were good, but their partner didn't want a drill sergeant or a pep talk coach.
Right. The important is to also recognize the fruit. I mean, I remember having a fierce conversation with Ellie where I was fearful that she was going to really fall behind and be embarrassed if she didn't really push herself to read. And, you know, one of the things that I said to her that, you know, just really stuck in her mind that was a motivator for her is I said, I've been checking in with you for 700 days, Ellie. And that's how long it's been that I've been trying to kind of say, hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. Do you think that you could give me one day and
all of a sudden in perspective
and try?
Ooh. And
then it became this perspective of, my goodness, 700 days is a long time. 700 days is, she couldn't even fathom that at that point. But it put a number on something, and it showed that I cared. And a lot of times that's what you're trying to break through in a fierce conversation. And, you know, what I'm continuing to remind my girls is my intentions are for your best. If you see another avenue to get us to being able to clean the dishes better, cool. Yeah. Groovy. And I need your help doing that. We're all here. We're all roommates. We're all partners in this house. And we keep running into your dish.
So what can we do
about that, love?
Yeah. And so, being honest with our kids, you know, I'm not here to force and control you. The reason I'm making this line or I'm drawing this boundary is for your own benefit. This is what I'm seeing. You know, do you feel like you can handle this? Have an honest conversation and share your fears with your children. Sometimes we draw that line and my parents are just trying to control me, when in reality we don't understand how much they care and what they stay up at night worrying about. So have those conversations and then listen to your partner or your child with an open mind and heart. you can share your perspective, and you have every right to share your perspective. And at that point, you put that down and you listen to their perspective and their story.
But perspective is like appetite. It's always coming around, but it can change.
Mm-hmm.
And your hunger for things can change. And so recognize that about people too.
And sometimes as they are sharing their story, their perspective shifts as they're sharing. I know many times where Nathan and I have had conversations that start heated or get heated because, I might be standing on my mountain of perspective, and the more I talk and the more he questions, my mountain starts crumbling around me where, oh, wait a second, maybe I don't think this, and okay, now I'm seeing another way. And we get to another spot. So it's not two people talking at each other. We're not saying that.
It's just interrogating the reality of each other.
We're
say, hey,
looking at the perspectives of the reality of what is. Our goal with sharing perspectives is to get to the reality of what is right now. The reality of what is regardless of your perspective or my perspective, there's tension right now. And that's what we want to address.
We want to come to a place of shared truth. Like, okay, we can agree on this thing. And, to that same point, even people that seem extremely difficult or polar opposite of you, we were listening to the book Surrender by Bono, and, he does a lot of international philanthropic stuff, and, he's constantly pushing countries to give to other countries. And, one of the things that I loved about his perspective is he is always looking for a connection point rather than focusing on the differences. There's so many, we all have our differences, but there's always a point out there that we can connect on. And looking for that is a great way to share an idea or a concept that can get you to that point of a shared reality.
Right.
And that's when you get to a shared reality where, like our girls understand the purpose of learning. So, we're getting to that stage where, okay, I get it. Like, this is for my best. I don't like it, but this is for my best interest.
And what they do then is they start taking ownership of it and saying, okay, if it's a reality that I need to do, then how can I make it more fun and enjoyable in the process?
That's when parenting gets fun. It's like, well, have you tried getting up first thing in the morning? Have you tried in the middle of the day? Have you tried time blocking? Helping them with their life skills when they're trying to figure out their schoolwork is a 2+ parenting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're killing two birds with one stone there.
Yeah, so you want to be willing to compromise and focus on the future. So look at not, again, my mountain versus their mountain. It's interrogating reality, and then it's looking
our
at, okay,
mountain
how
range.
can we, what's our mountain range look like, and how can we create a path that works for all of them?
Yep.
So look for ways to compromise. I mean, there are times where the compromise may be with the parents, recognizing that, okay, we need to have a little bit of a break to love each other better. And we're going to do this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Or we need to take a serious break and reevaluate what we both are bringing into this relationship. I mean, those conversations may be what is needed, or it may be that it's, it's with a kid, it's working with a compromise of, okay, I understand that you have created, we're a traveling family and you have friends on Facebook, on Messenger Kids. And while we weren't going to do that, we're going to allow for some opportunities for it because that's where your friends are already, and you want to be able to connect with them, and we understand that. So we make compromises. We work with our children, we work with our partners to create that home that is a safe haven where everyone feels supported and heard. Just laying down the hammer and having one person dictate it creates a home that has enough force and pressure that there's a lot of explosions that come out of that and may not make it back home. And we want to create that intentional home of peace and connection. Even while our viewpoints may differ, while we are growing at different paces, that desire is that connection of love and willingness to show up for yourselves and for each other.
And we do that so that...
And with that, yes, we'll wrap this up. Our challenge to you is to think about that. Who do you need to have a fierce conversation with this week in your home? Is it having a fierce conversation with your 2-year-old and talking about the reality of sleeping and what bedtime looks like and everything else?
Maybe it's having a fierce conversation with yourself to make some changes that need to happen in your life.
Maybe it's finally having that conversation with your partner as you've been kind of bristling next to each other for a while, and just talking about the reality of what is and how serious it could be, what wedge has been drawn, and how you're going to bridge that gap to create that better relationship. So love and support one another. Create space for both to be heard. Remember, you have the power to share your side of the story, and you have the power to open up to find connection with others, so that the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Namaste.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Namaste in your heart. Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.